believe this is where we stopped last time in terms of the argument that they give us here. And from this argument reminder, this is the steps for you to verify if this argument is a valid argument or an invalid argument. The step is, first we have to take this argument. We have to take this argument and convert this argument from word into symbolic, right? We have to take the first line and take that and turn it to symbolic, take the second line and turn to the symbolic, and take the third line and turn that to symbolic. So in the sense, the easy part for you guys is they identify the P and they identify the Q. They give you some P, they give you some Q. Now all you need to do is take this item and convert to the P or the Q, right? Take this item. So as always, the good thing for you guys, or the good thing for this class, is for our argument, we only have two premises. We only have premise 1, which is your first sentence, your premise 2, which is your second sentence, and the third sentence will be your conclusion. So to translate this, like I mentioned, anything related to Monday, anything related to class on Monday, that will be your P. Anything related to chapter 3 will be your Q. So in this case, what is my connector? My connector is the OR connector, and the OR connector is basically the V, right? P, V, Q. So Monday is my P, the OR connector is the V, and the Q is the chapter 3. So the correlation or the translation of this word into this symbolic is P, V, Q, because they don't have any word not, so we don't need any negation. And similarly, right, this thing here relate to Monday. We know that relate to Monday will be my P, and my P is the Monday class. And now the only thing different on the Monday class is because they say it's not Monday, and because it's not Monday, I have to put in the negation, and the negation is the squiggly line or the tilde P. So again, my P is we have class on Monday. The negation will be we do not have class on Monday. And to illustrate the negation, we just put a squiggly P. And lastly, right, we will not cover chapter 3. Again, chapter 3 relate to my Q, and we are not cover chapter 3, meaning the negation of Q. And this is what we have to translate from word to symbolic. Once you convert from word to your symbolic, all you need to do is fill in this formula. And your formula, like I mentioned, the blue ink will be fixed. Those items will never change, right? All you do is you take the first line, you put it first, P, V, Q, P, R, Q. The second line, you put a second negation of P, and the third line, you put it third. And this formula will always be the and the arrow, the upside down V and the arrow that is fixed. The blue ink are fixed. The only thing is you take the first line, you put first, second line, you put second, and the third line, you put third. And once we have this, and this is where I run out of time on yesterday, I asked you to construct this truth table. And if you already did this truth table, you see that this argument is invalid, right? So looking at this thing here, how do we construct this truth table? Well, to construct the truth table, we need to start with our starter kit. This is your starter kit, and on Alex, they give you this starter kit, they give you this P, they give you this Q. So one last thing you need to remember, they give you any truth table, they give it to you here. And now we know that this item, you know, one thing, if we were in class, I tell my student this. If we were in class, I tell my student, ask yourself how many connector you have. And in this connector, as you can see, we have 3 different connector. Just imagine that this is number 1. This is number 1. This is number 2, and this is number 3. Meaning we need at least 3 columns that include this connector, and this connector. In order for you to do number 2, you know that you need this parenthesis, you need this connector. In order for you to do number 3, you need the bracket and the negation of Q. So that's what you need, is whatever connector, you need to look for the 2 things on the side. So, you know, always your goal is you want to work from left to right, or you ask yourself, what can you do first? There's no way you can do number 2 if you don't have the 2 items on the side of number 2. And looking at my starter kit, I don't have that 2 items, right? So the starter kit can only tell me that I can only do number 1. And to do number 1, I need to ask myself, do I have the 2 items on the side? And in this case, I do. I have the P, I have the Q. And if I do have that, now this is all I need to do, is I need to ask myself, what is this all criteria mean, right? This connector, this is my all connector. What does this all connector tell me? Or what is the all criteria? For me, the all criteria is as long as there's a true. Doesn't matter where I see it. Each row, as long as I see one true, the all connector tell me that is true. And again, that is the criteria for the all connector for me. As long as there's a true on whatever row that I compare, as long as there's a true, the result is true. The only time the all connector is false is when both of them are false. Okay, so that's how I remember my all connector, and that's what you need to do, is you need to know your criteria and you need to know your notation, right? So the all connector, I'm done. Ladies and gentlemen, you see that this item, whatever this item is, that is the item I have right here, which is the parenthesis. That's my parenthesis. So I no longer looking at this as an individual. I look at the whole thing. I don't look at the individual P, individual Q anymore. Whatever this parenthesis, that's what I have right here. So if I refer to my parenthesis, I refer to this column. I don't refer to my individual P and individual Q. Okay, so I got the first item. My first item now is right here, or my first connector is right here. Now, can I do number 2? Well, not quite. In order to do number 2, I need this parenthesis, which I have, and I need this negation of P, but in my truth table, I don't have the negation of P. And if I don't have negation of P, the negation of P is easy, because negation of P is whatever P is the opposite. The negation is basically tell you that is the opposite of P. So what is my P? My P is true, then the opposite will be false, right? My P is true, the opposite is false. My P is true, the opposite is false. And my P is false, the opposite is true. So the opposite, the negation is the opposite of P. And this is what my P is. The opposite will be the opposite true value. And as you can see, now I can do number 2. I can do number 2 because I got the parenthesis on the left and I got the negation of P on the right. And now what is the connector of number 2? The connector of number 2 that I'm working with is the AND connector. And the AND connector, this is what you need to ask yourself one more time, right? What is my AND connector? Tell me, what is the criteria of the AND connector? And make sure that you compare the right column. My column that I compare is this 2 column, the parenthesis and the negation of P. Those are the 2 columns, and the AND connector for me, my AND connector tell me as long as there's a false, doesn't matter where, as long as on this row, as long as I see a false between the 2 items I compare to, as long one of them is false, the result is false. So I can see that this is false, this is false. I don't see a false at the 3rd row, so it's true. And again, this is false. We don't look at every single item, ladies and gentlemen. Like I keep on mentioning, you only compare 2 columns at most. Make sure you know what 2 columns to compare. So everybody see that we are done with number 2. Whatever number 2 is, whatever this connector is, that's right here. So I'm done with number 2, and hopefully you guys see that it's just a a ladder, right? A step ladder. We want to, whatever we don't need, we insert them in. We no longer need any of this item here, okay? Because whatever in my bracket, I'm looking as a whole, and the whole bracket is this, I'm using the wrong one. My whole bracket is this item right here. This is my bracket. So whatever referred to the bracket, that is the column I'm looking at, okay? So everybody see that this number 1 connector, I got it, I'm done. Number 2 connector, I got it, I'm done. Now I need to do number 3. And in order for me to do number 3, we need this bracket, and that's what my bracket is. And I need this negation of Q. So how do I find, or how do I do the negation of Q? Once again, the negation is just the opposite. And the opposite of what? The opposite of Q. So we don't look at P, we're looking at Q, the opposite of Q. What is the opposite of Q? It will be false, true. It's false, true, right? I make a mistake. This is false, ladies and gentlemen. Let me insert this here and let me do the text. This is false, it's not true. This is false because again, Q is true, so the negation of Q have to be false. And again, false, true, and this is item that we have, okay? So again, small typo there. So question with so far what we have. And once we have the negation, we know that we no longer need this. We only need 2 things at most. We need this bracket, and wherever the bracket is, that's my bracket. We need the negation of Q. We got the negation of Q. Now I can do the last item, and this last item here is my reminder that this is the if and then connector, and or the implication or reminder that the if and then connector, the only time that is false, right? The only time that is false is the first thing is true and the second thing is false. That is the only time that the result is false. Anywhere else, if it does not follow this sequence, if it does not follow this sequence here, T arrow F, if it's not follow that sequence, then it will be true. So the sequence is we have to, and like I mentioned, the difference between the if and then the arrow is whatever on the left, you have to look at first, whatever on the right, you have to look at second. So in this case, what is on my left? My left is my bracket. This is my bracket. I look at this thing first. My right item is the negation of Q. I'm looking at this item second. And in the center, looking at this thing here, you can see that this is the only time that sequence fit this sequence we're looking at. The first thing is T, arrow, the second thing is F. If the first thing is false, it's automatically true. We don't care about the second one. If the first thing is false, it's automatically true. If the first thing is false, it's automatically true. First thing is true, then the arrow, we need to look at the second one. In this case, is false. This is the pattern. This is the sequence that we have that is false. If it's not in this pattern, if it's not in this sequence, then the result will be true. So as you can see, this is what we have. And this is all we're looking for, right? All of this thing here, we only looking for the end product. And my end product is this. This is the end product I'm looking at. And now my end product, in order for this argument to be valid, my end product have to be a tautology, meaning my end product have to be T, 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 or true. If it's not, then it's invalid, right? So that's the item, the step, the procedure. And I break it down because last time, some students still have trouble with the truth table, and that's why I try to break it down from step to step. And if if in case whoever missed the item, you guys can see, or hopefully you missed the criteria, you can see which criteria is which, okay? So this item here, because my final product is not a tautology, it's not all true, and that's why it's invalid. And that's why earlier I told you that if you did this item, you see that the argument is invalid. So question here, first of all, question on which column that I missed you guys, or which column that you did not see how I have, or question in terms of how to determine valid or invalid. All right, if you don't have question, take a look at the last item I want to cover. And the last item I want to cover is, is pretty easy in the sense that in your book and on Alex, they give you this item. The argument, they give you the name of the argument, and they tell you this item right here, ladies and gentlemen, that if your argument follow this pattern, if your argument follow this 3 or 4 pattern up here, then the result will be valid. Okay, so if you remember the previous item we have, if you remember the previous item or the formula we have last time, I cannot type it. I do it later. But again, basically they tell you is whatever the argument you have, if it's followed this pattern, it will be valid. If it's followed any of this 4 pattern up here, that it will be valid. Okay, and if your argument come out to be any of this item, any of this 4 item here, if it's come out to be any of this 4 item on the bottom, it will be invalid. And that's it. They basically tell you that instead of doing the truth table, because the truth table is, if you do it correct, it will come out this all the time. So instead of doing the truth table, they give you this item and they say, just compare it. If your argument follow the yellow item on top, it will always be valid. And if the item on the bottom, it will be invalid. So take a look at this right here. Take a look at this right here. Well, we don't have the pattern that I have. The previous one is not this item here. The previous one is the negation and the negation. So if the thing is, this thing is very restricted. I thought I give you this item here, P or Q, P not Q, but I did not give you that item. The previous one or this item here, I give you is P or Q, not P, right? I give you P or Q, not P, not Q. So it's not really this item here. So that's the bad thing about this chart or this table that we have is have to be in that form. If it's not in that form, we don't know how to justify it. Okay, so it's got to be in one of this 8 form in order for you to justify. Last time, like I mentioned, the problem I give you is P or Q, negation of P, negation of Q. And that item is not in one of this form, we don't know. So you have to construct your truth table, okay? So that's the problem. But to look at this item here, if they give you this table, then your item will always follow one of this 8 item. So I took this from I took this from your homework or your Alex item. And this is what they tell you is let P, Q, and R be this item. Laura is at the beach. Laura wearing sandal. Laura is comfortable. So again, P is, they identify your P, they identify your Q, they identify your R. And now they give you this argument, and very, as you can see, very consistently the same. They give you premise 1, premise 2, conclusion. The word therefore is the 3 dot, right? So they ask you, can you verify if this item, the argument is valid or invalid? So in order for you to identify if it's valid or invalid, we need to take this word and compare to or translate this item to symbolic. So we can see that we have P, Q, and R. And in here, they say, if Laura is at the beach, Laura wears sandals, so P implies Q. Sandal, comfortable. So again, we know that this problem have PQ and all, so this is probably the two items we're looking at, PQ all, because anything else is only PQ, right? So how do we translate this? Do you agree that the connector, my premise one, the connector is P error Q? Why P? Because Laura is at the beach, which is, that's my P. The if and then, that's my error. Wearing sandal, that's my Q. And my premise two, Laura wears sandal, sandal is my Q, imply she is comfortable, imply the all. So again, everybody see that this premise one is P error Q, this premise two, Q error all. So you can see that, well, wait a minute. The top one, P error Q, well, both of them is PQ, or P error Q and Q error all, P error Q, Q error all. So we know that this is 2. Now, in order to verify if it's valid or invalid, what is the conclusion? The conclusion is if Laura is comfortable. So when is Laura comfortable is my all statement. So in this case, all error P. Do you see that the beach is related to the P? So we can see that all error P is in this form. And if it's in this form, everybody see that when you translate from word, you translate this word to the symbolic. And if you have the symbolic to be in this exact form, then we justify, or we just say that because it's in this form, is an invalid argument because it's in the invalid form. Okay, so we haven't done any PQ and all truth table, and I don't think they asked you, so we won't do PQ and all truth table to confuse you. Just stick with the PQ item. But this item here, this problem is basically they tell you that the pattern on top is valid all the time. The pattern on the bottom is invalid all the time. So if you can recognize that it's one of this item, it's one of this pattern, then we don't need to do the truth table. The problem comes is if it's not in one of this pattern, then you have to do the truth table. Okay. So first of all, question with how to utilize the table and how to take the table and identify if it's valid or invalid. If you don't have question, let's take a look at, like I mentioned, if you were to do this by hand, and mostly, hopefully you guys would do it by hand on your piece of paper. Let's say if I ask you to construct this truth table, okay? So this is the truth table, and the reason why I give you this truth table, and again, this truth table probably is not on your homework won't give you this big of a truth table. The only reason why I give you this truth table is this thing here include every single thing we have. They have the all, they have the and, they have the if and only if, they have the if and then, and on top of that, we have a negation. So basically we have the 5 criteria, the 5 notation, the 5 connector that we have, and that's why I give you this item so that we can review each of the criteria. Okay, so let's do this criteria so that you guys can write down your notes if whoever still did not get the get to write your note prior. So let's say if we were to have this, like I mentioned, if you were to have this item on your, how would you go and construct this truth table by hand, right? So if you construct this truth table by hand, reminder, let me use black ink. Reminder that we have to start your truth table, your P and Q will be true, true, false, false. And this is true, false, true, false. Again, you don't have to remember this, but this is your starter kit. So whenever they ask you to construct a truth table, this is my starter kit. I will always start with PQ because if you look at my problem, if you look at this item, we only have PQ. So this is what I mentioned earlier, ladies and gentlemen. This is what you want to ask yourself is, how many connector we have? Everybody see we have 1 connector here, 2 connector, 3 connector, and 4 connector. And again, those are the 4 connector we have: the or, the and, the if and only if, and the if and then. Right? The negation is not a connector. A negation is just the negation. So before, if you look at this thing here, this is the main connector. This connect whatever this item is with this item here. Before we can do number 2, everybody see that we need to have number 1 and number 3, right? So looking at this thing here, there's no way we can do number 2 without knowing what number 1 and number 3 is. And there's no way we can do number 4 without whatever this whole item is and this negation of Q. So in the beginning, as you can see, we see that the only thing, or the first thing that we can do is we can do this item here, the all criteria, right? We can do the all criteria because they asked me P or Q. And what is the all criteria? If you remember, the all criteria is as long as there's a true, I see a true here. As long as there's a true, the result is true. As long as there's a true, the result is true. As long as there's a true, the result is true. I don't see a true at the last item, so that would be my false item. So again, that is what my or statement tell me. The or statement tell me is as long as there's a true, as long as there's a true, I see a true here. As long as there's a true, the result is true. Everybody see that that is what we have. Doesn't matter which one, as long as I see one true, the result is true. So we're done with the or statement. Whatever the number 1, whatever this thing is, I got that. That's done. Now we can do number 3. But before we can do number 3, everybody see that I'm missing the negation of P, right? I'm missing the negation of P. And I want to show you that the red color is basically, that's the operation that I'm working with, right? The red color is that the operation I'm working with. So what is the negation of P? Reminder, the negation of P is we look at the P column and we take the opposite. What is the opposite of P? Which is false, false, true, true. So we got the negation of P. Now I can work with this connector. My double arrow, reminder, the double arrow is the if and only if, right? That's number 3 right here. And that tell me the negation of P, Q. If and only if, negation P, and if and only if Q. So do you agree that this is the 2 column I need to compare to for my if and only if criteria? I don't look at anything else other than this 2 column, the second column and the 4th column. Now, what is the criteria for the if and only if? Reminder for you guys, whoever did not, the if and only if criteria is as long as they have the same true value, as long as they have the same true value, or as long as they have the same false value, meaning they need to have 2 of the same. And if they have 2 of the same, the result will be true. So the only time that I see 2 of the same, and again, the important thing is you have to know what 2 column I'm looking at, what 2 column you compare to, and the 2 column I'm comparing is the second and the 4th, and the if and only if, the 2 double arrow. Just remember, double arrow, 2 arrow, you need 2 of the same. You need 2 of the same, either 2 of the T or 2 of the F in order to be true. So in this case, the middle part is true. And ladies and gentlemen, do you see that I got number 3? I got the whatever the parenthesis is, and I just show you, or not show you, but I just not confuse you with the bracket and the parenthesis. The bracket and parenthesis just tell you that we have a different connector, okay? So do you agree that now if I have the first number, or connector number 1 and connector number 3, I can do a connector of number 2. And the connector of number 2 tell me that this is my AND statement. And my AND statement tell me that I need to, again, similarly to my OR statement, I need, or whatever the connector is, you need to ask yourself, what are the two columns I need? So the two columns I need to looking at is the connector number 1, the OR statement, and the connector number 3, my if and only if statement. And this is the connector is my AND connector. And everybody see that I don't need to. This is what if you were to see me doing in my class, we don't need to write what inside the two parentheses. We know that we're looking for the two parentheses, and where is the two parentheses? The two parentheses is right here is the first parenthesis. This is the second parenthesis, and that is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the third column and the fourth column. The individual parentheses, we don't looking at it, right? So everybody see like my red ink, this is my connector. My connector is the AND connector, and the AND connector tell me to look at this column, number 3, and number 5 column. And the AND connector, the criteria for the AND connector is, as long as I have a false, doesn't matter where, as long as one of them is false, the result is false. And again, I don't see a false in between here. This and this is true, the result is true, right? This and this is true, the result is true. As long as I see a false, which is one of them is false, the result is false for my AND item. Okay, so that's what we want to do is we want to ask ourselves at each particular column, what are we comparing? At each particular column, what am I comparing or what am I doing? So first of all, let me pause and let me ask any of you guys question in terms of the first 4 items I have here in terms of the word or, the negation, the if and only if, and the AND statement.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
So just for the P and Q, you just made up the two falses, like on whatever pattern, that doesn't matter?
No, for the P and Q, it's got to be, the P got to be true, true, false, false, and the Q have to be true, false, true, false.
That's always going to be the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And on Alex, they give that to you. On Alex, they give you the starter kit, right? So this starter kit will always be the same.
So they give that to you, and then we just write everything else.
Right.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
Yeah. On Alex, if you did the homework or if you did the pie, yeah, Alex give you this 2 items, the starter kit. They give that to you. The reason I do it here because we do it by hand. So if you do it by hand, you have to create that. So the P and the Q is always given. Any other question here? I see someone type in the chat. Give me 1 second. Yes, I don't know yet. I haven't done it yet. So I don't know what the final product is. But again, question here in terms of the OR statement. Again, this is my OR statement. Question in terms of my OR statement right here. My negation. My if and only if. And my AND statement. Question of this 4 column that we have after the PQ. The PQ is fixed. It's true, true, false, false for P, true, false for Q. Always that item. So if you don't have question, do you agree that in order for me to do number 4, which I have this item, right? We got number 1 done. We got number 2 done. We got number 3. Now the only thing left is we need to do number 4. And to do number 4, do you agree that I need the negation of Q? And the negation of Q is we look at Q, and the negation of Q will be false, true, right? Whatever Q is the opposite. So Q is true, false. The negation will be false, true. Okay. So let me move this. I don't think I can move it further. So to finish this item, everybody see that we don't really need to know. We don't need to know what in my bracket, right? Whatever my bracket is, this is my bracket. Meaning again, I zoom in because to do this thing here, we only need the last two columns. We don't care anything prior to this column here and this column here, because we only need to know whatever in my bracket is, and that's why my bracket is right here. And whatever the last item is, which is the last item is here. And to do this item, remember this is the if and then statement, the if and then statement. And the if and then statement tell me that how can or when does the if and then statement, the implication is false. Reminder, the only time that is false is when the first thing is true and the second thing is false. So this is what if I were to do it by hand, I say, well, the first thing is this. The first thing is this. If the first thing is true, I need to look at the second one. If the first thing is true, the second one is true, is still true. The first thing is true and the second one is false. This is false. This is the only time that is false, is the first thing is true and the second one is false. If the first thing is false, it's automatically true. Ladies and gentlemen, if the first thing is false, right here, we don't care about the second one. If the first thing is false, it's automatically true, okay? Meaning the final product, and again, I am apologize for the messy of this item here, but this is our final product that we have, in the sense that this is my final column, my final answer. And the reason why I give you, like I mentioned, the only reason why I give you, I don't think Alex give this to you guys. The only reason why I give you this item here is to review the connector of each of this connector here. Okay, and those are the 5 connector that you have. The OR connector, which is the disjunction, the AND connector, which is the conjunction, the if and only if, which is a biconditional statement, and the if and then, which is a conditional statement. So your goal, the thing about Alex is, if you already did the Alex, they tell you, we don't need this, 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 right? On Alex, they basically tell you that if you put it in, they won't count as a grade. They're only looking for the final product. And that's why I told you guys that if you want to do this thing here to make it easy on you guys, help your eye out, what you do is you just do it on a piece of paper and then just type the last column, whatever this column is, on Alex, and they will give you your grade, right? And reminder for your test, if you want to have a portion credit, you need to submit your scratch work with something like this to me 15 minutes after you take your test. After you submit your test, you have to submit the scratch work. I will not accept any scratch work after Saturday, which is your due day of this test. Okay, so after Saturday, your scratch work will not count. First of all, question with this particular item that we have to do it by hand, or how to use this thing or do it by hand. And as you can see, that's why I like to type up my my item, because it's look a little bit messy in terms of this item here. If you don't have question with the, go ahead.
Sorry. So do we just submit our scratch work to you through via email, or?
Yes.
Okay. So just take a picture of it and
yeah. Either take a picture, or if you have a scanner, you can scan it and attach it to my email.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So if you don't have question with the truth table, and like I mentioned, those are the only 4 connector we have along with the negation. Let's take a look at the other thing that we have in terms of how do you come up with if you look at this item, they ask you to form the converse, inverse, contrapositive, and negation. Not negation, just the 3 items: converse, inverse, and contrapositive for this item here. So reminder for me, or the easiest way, and if you did the homework, they tell you that you have to write in You have to write it in English, right? So this item here, if you remember, I told you, imagine that the first statement is this item here, and the second statement is this item. And whatever your conditional statement is, the if and then, whatever we have, just imagine that your original item is your P imply the Q, right? So whatever the first item is your P, the second item is your Q. And to review or go back to this converse, reminder, what is the converse? The converse is you flip the two statement. You flip the two statement, meaning again, the if and the then stay the same. The if and then stay the same. The only thing you're saying is, we will say, if I can play my video game, if I can play my video game, then what happened? Then the electricity is not out. Right? So again, this is what we have. This is what we have in the sense that all we're doing is we take the second item, move it to the front, and the first item, move it to the back. And that's what your converse is. Your converse is you switch you switch the P and you switch the Q. So question with the converse here. And if you remember, what is the inverse? The inverse tell me that you have to keep it the same, but we negate both of them. We negate the first item. And how do we negate the first item? Reminder, the negation of the first item is, if they have the word not, we take it out. If they don't have the word not, we put it in, which is, if the electricity is out, we take out the word not, then what happened? Then I cannot play my video game. But I see that that's what we have to do is, for the inverse, we kept it original, but we negate them. So in this case, if the electricity is not out, then inverse, if the electricity is out, then I can play video game. The negation will be, then I cannot play my video game. Okay. So again, question here in terms of how to come up with the converse or how to come up with the inverse. And reminder, right? Reminder, the if and the then stay intact. You know, and the if and then stay intact. You will never move the if and then. So question with the converse or the inverse. And lastly, the contrapositive. How do we do the contrapositive? Reminder, the contrapositive is, they tell you is, we need to flip them around and negate them. Meaning whatever your P and your Q is, you move their position and then you negate them too. So if you move their position and you negate them, this is what you should, is if I cannot play my video game, then what happened? Then the electricity is out. Okay, so again, that's what we have, is the negation of this item here. So in the sense of this item, question here in terms of how to come up with the converse, how to come up with the inverse. Again, think in terms of whatever your first item is your P, whatever the second item is your Q. All you're doing is you either flip them around, keep it the same, but negate both of them. And the last item is you flip them and you negate them. Or if you think in terms of this thing here, the contrapositive is the converse of the inverse, meaning you flip the inverse, right? Whatever your inverse is, you flip them around. And once again, the if and then still stay the same, okay? So looking at this item here, question with the converse, inverse, contrapositive. Any question so far, or any question with the truth table? Any question with the truth table, or any question with the converse, inverse, or contrapositive here?